Good morning. And we're just talking plans here in Sunday school. We pick up this lesson today in our unit. Our unit, of course, is about navigating family conflict. Last week we looked at Isaac and Rebekah and the birth of their twins, Jacob and Esau. Esau was born first, but Jacob had a hold of his heel. There was contention among them in the womb, and it didn't get any better when they got out. And their parents didn't help much either. Um, Esau became Isaac's favorite. Jacob became Rebekah's favorite just by nature. But they should not have shown that much favoritism. It led to conflicts down the road. And so we saw last week where Esau, the writer, I don't know how far I'd say this. The writer said he turned out to be maybe a little dim-witted. He wasn't quite all there, but I think part of it was he just was a little more selfish. I mean, he showed that in the fact that he came in, he knew he was going to die, and so he traded away his birthright for a little porridge to his brother, and then the father was going to give him the blessing, and then the mother, Rebecca, tricked him out of that. That's what we looked at last week. And so as the story goes on, here's poor Esau. He's got nothing. And that's where we pick up today. Genesis 27, verses 35 through 41. It says, but he replied, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. That was Isaac said to, he said to Esau, your brother came. I felt his arm. It seemed like you. I ate the food. It seemed like what you'd made. Don't blame me. I'm a blind old man. He took your blessing. Verse 36. So he said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is what Esau said. Isn't he rightly named Jacob? He's the trickster. He's the conniver. He has cheated me twice now. Well, the first time you gave it up, but this time he did really cheat you. And he took my birthright, and look, now he has taken my blessing. And then he asked, haven't you saved a blessing for me? But Isaac answered Esau, look, I made him a master over you, have given him all of his relatives, as his servants, and have sustained him with grain and new wine. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. And Esau wept loudly. Usually when you weep loudly in something like this, it's because you knew you messed up. He knew he trusted things, and he shouldn't have. So it says in verse 39, his father Isaac answered him, look, your dwelling place will be away from the richness of the land, away from the dew of the sky above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you rebel, you will break his yoke from your neck. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And Esau determined in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. I never wanted to kill my brothers. I can't imagine anybody being that way. So the first point is we need to assert, or sometimes we assert the right to hate, but there is never a right to hate, is there? There's no right to hate people, but we know God hates sin. That's valid, but we cannot hate people. We don't have the right to take lives. We don't have the right to control that. We didn't make it. We didn't do it. It's not ours. It belongs to God. And so he tells him the only way for you to break this is basically when you rebel against him. You'll either overpower him or you'll just do away with him. And that's pretty harsh words, I think. That's pretty strong stuff. So Isaac, he had already given that blessing away, and he really didn't have anything else. But he could, maybe give a little bit of a prophetic prediction and saying that, the only way you'll do that is if you break it. I mean, you have to be the one who breaks it. In our human minds, we only think the only way to break it is to do away with it, or to do away with them. But we're going to learn in the end that there is another way to break it, and that is to do what's right. Okay, so Esau wept loudly. It was part of knowing it was his own fault. Part of it was he just knew there's no turning back. Okay, so then we go to Genesis 33, and a lot happens here between 27 and 33. Um, for his fear of his life, Rebecca decides that Jacob probably needs to get out of town. He needs to go somewhere else. She's got a brother named Laban. Well, I'll just send him up to Laban's. We'll just ship him out north there, and he can go up there, and maybe Esau cool down a little bit. Maybe he'll learn to not want to hate or destroy or kill his brother. Well, Esau might have thought that I won't have to wait too long because my dad thinks he's about to die, even though we know he lived another 80 years after that. Miraculously, he got a little better, and then he stayed a little better. But time did pass. And so when it comes down to it, our next point is that you really need to choose to be humble in the situation. And I think these two brothers learn what they should have learned in childhood out of what happens next in their lives. They learn that they could have gotten along, that they should have been humble. They should have been forgiving and gracious to each other. And then they could have been family. It took them a long time to get there, but they eventually do. So Genesis 33, 1-4 says, Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming toward him with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two slave women. Well, we'll stop there for just a second. Jacob goes north, and there's a whole other narrative that goes along with that. He camps with Laban. Laban, his uncle, I think, has two daughters. He looks at Leah, and she's kind of homely, but he looks at Rachel. She's beautiful. He wants Rachel, and so he works 7 years to earn her, to get her, and then Leah was the older, and so Laban, his new father-in-law, tricks him, and instead of given him Rachel on their wedding night, he gives him Leah on the wedding night. And the next thing he knows, gets up in the morning and he's married to Leah. And, there's no justice of the peace or whatever to go and annul that or do whatever. He's married to her now. He's got her. Well, Laban says, I had to marry her off first. She was the firstborn. Had to do it. And so he did that. Jacob met his trickster match, his, conniving match in his new father-in-law, Laban. Okay. But Laban says, however, here's what I'll do. I'm not going to make you work another 7 years to get Rachel. Work 7 days, and then you can have them both. They'll both be your wives. Well, sometimes sister rivalry is as bad as brother rivalry. And so here he's got these two sisters in his house, and then Leah is productive. She bears children. Rachel's barren, does not. And so there's jealousy among them. They send in their servant girls, their handmaids, and he has children with them. And so the next thing you know, he's got this whole slug of kids, 12 sons. That's where we get the 12 tribes of Israel, out of Jacob and his two wives and his two slave women, his two concubines. Okay, so time comes. He and Laban decide it's time for them to part company. Plus, he thinks he probably ought to get home, and so he leaves. But he knows he sends word to Esau that I'm coming. Hope we can settle our differences. Love your brother, whatever. So he hears word that Esau is coming to meet him. So he's a little bit scared. So he sets everything up in order to where when he gets there, he kind of protects himself. He kind of puts the women and the children out in front. Then he sends some things, some possessions that he has as a peace offering, as a love gift to Esau, hoping maybe that'll kind of appease him because he knows Esau's going to kill him. I mean, that's what he was planning to do when he left. he didn't know whether it's changed or not. So here's what he did in Genesis 33. It says, verse 2. He put the slaves and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Why? Because Joseph was the only child that Rachel had at this time. Of course, we know later on on the journey, she has Benjamin. And so then, verse 3, he himself went on ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times until he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Then they wept. So they both chose humility. And so they talk a little bit. How you doing? Man, you're getting old man. My gosh, your hair's getting gray. How people, if you haven't seen each other, have a little family reunion. They kind of got things together. Where'd you get all these wives? Where'd you get all these people? My gosh, what's going on here? That kind of thing. And then Esau says to him, what about all these possessions you put out here? Well, that's the next part. We're going to get to that. So in verse 8, it says, Esau said, what do you mean by this whole procession I'm at? To find favor with you, my Lord, Jacob says. Why did he call Esau my Lord, which is a sign of not only humility, but it's a sign of respect. It's also a sign of saying, I'm going to be submissive to you, even though I took the birthright because you gave it up. I took the blessing because I tricked you out of it, but I'm still going to see you as my brother. I don't want anything to come between us. And so he says to him, it was to find favor with you. And he uses that my Lord term. I'm submitting to your authority, basically what he says. I have enough, my brother, Esau replied in verse 9. Keep what you have. Well, in that time, you really didn't reject a gift, especially a gift of humility. You better receive it or you will offend people. Jacob said in verse 10, no, please, if I have found favor with you, take this gift from me. For indeed, I have seen your face, and it is like seeing God's face, since you have accepted me. So Jacob continues to compliment him. He's saying, look, brother, I've missed you. And just seeing you is like seeing the face of God. I mean, I'm really happy to see you. I'm so glad that we got to this point. And so in verse 11, he says, please take my present that I brought to you, because God has been gracious to me and I have everything I need. So Jacob urged him until he accepted. Basically, Esau knew that if he really wanted to show that they had reconciliation, he needed to take the gift. And Jacob insisted until he did. Isn't it good to see that these two brothers, even in the womb, they had fought. And now at this point, they are figuring out, we can agree to disagree. We don't have to be alike. We don't have to do the right thing or the same things in order for us to be family. Took them their lifetime, almost, didn't it? Took a while, but they finally got to that point. Family relations. I hate it when families fight. There's no reason. You don't need to do that. It's unnecessary. Somebody, needs to be humble enough to simply say, it's okay. In all time and eternity, what does it matter? And with Jacob and his clan, God's going to use them. We read in the New Testament where God literally said in Scripture, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Now, that's pretty strong words or verbiage, you might say. But God is basically saying, Jacob was the one I wanted to work through, even though he was not the firstborn. He was the anointed one. He was the one I was going to work through. And nothing against Esau. We can't even begin to determine why God chooses what he chooses, but he does. And it's up to us to work it out, to not be angry with God, but to let God be God and let him choose and let him do it his way, because his way is always perfect. It's always right. So they finally got to this place where they could agree, even though they'd taken their own way along the way. They got to a place where they could have relations together. Next week will be a good one. Joseph and his brothers. And, that's another story in itself. God bless y'all. Bye-bye.